and welcome back to Leaving the Church to Find God, your safe space for exploring faith beyond traditional walls. I'm your host, Melissa, and whether you grew up in the evangelical church like I did, or any other system seeking answers, you're in the right place. This podcast isn't about judgment or attacking institutions. It's about honest conversations, diverse spiritual paths, and celebrating the unique journeys that we all take in search of meaning. We've all experienced indoctrination in some form, and here we explore how it shapes our understanding of ourselves and the divine. Each week, we'll dive into thought-provoking topics, share inspiring stories from guests and listeners like you, and offer tools and insights for navigating your own deconstruction journey. Remember, leaving the church doesn't mean leaving your faith. It's about finding your own authentic connection to something greater. So buckle up, embrace the open dialogue, and join me as we explore what it means to move beyond confines and discover the deeper personal connection to the divine that exists within us all. Aloha and welcome back, fellow seekers. Are you ready to continue your incredible journey with Ralston? In part one, we explored his remarkable transformation from church leader to clairvoyant healer. Now we dive into the heart of his practice. Prepare to learn how Rich uses practices like chakra balancing and past life clearing to facilitate healing, practical tools you can integrate into your own life to unlock hidden energy potential, and the unseen forces shaping your reality and how to work with them for well-being and growth. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and equipped with knowledge to navigate the currents of your own subtle energy. So let's continue our exploration with Rich Ralston. I want to go back to that, what you were saying about the ego. And one thing when I really got radically honest with myself that I realized is when I felt so strongly about a stance and that I needed to defend something and convince people of something, it's because I needed to convince myself. It's because it was me against my higher self. And really I felt like the more people I could get to agree with me, the more that would be right. But my soul knew that it wasn't. And I think that that's where the conflict comes in, where we just really need to get everybody on our team, is because our soul knows that we don't believe it.
Yeah, and our self-validation. We want to validate ourselves. Yeah, that ego thing is predominant in human beings because we all want to, well, even in animals. I mean, the animal kingdom's the same way. They've all inherited this energy field of consciousness that requires us to be accepted, I guess. The word acceptance, I think, is more of it. You're accepted into a group, a norm. Mm-hmm. We all want to be accepted by somebody or some, and that's what triggers people to get religious, is they want to be accepted by God. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was in India, I was driving down the road and I had just come from working with a bunch of people, and I kept asking God, is this acceptable to you? And I'll never forget that moment. It says, are you pleased with me? Is this acceptable? And it was like, it was kind of like, I got this thing, you're always accepted. Why are you asking me that question? Mm-hmm. It was like one of my angels was saying, you got to wake up here. You're not doing this to be approved by God. You see, you're not over here to be approved by God so you can go to heaven and get a bunch of rewards. Why are you here?
Of living your life, or like missing your whole life for the thing that happens after your life. It's mind-blowing.
Well, yeah, that's what the pretense of it all is. It's like you don't go to church and you don't go to mass, or you don't, I was in a church where you had to go 3 times a week, and if you miss a service, God's not going to be happy with you. And if you don't tithe, then you're stealing from God, and all these kind of mind control tactics.
Or if you're sick, or if you're struggling, it's because God's displeased with you somehow. There's never a winning in that. There's never you're going to reach the place you're supposed to be. It's always a deficit. It's always trying to keep up with something else.
Never meet the standards of Christ.
Right.
And exactly. If your family's in trouble, it means you don't pray enough.
Right. I remember my little brother having seizures. I was about I was 18 and I had a baby brother and he was having seizures. And I remember my mom and my stepdad sat me down and told me that it was because I wasn't living right. That my brother was having seizures, and I got in a hit and run. Somebody hit my car and ran. And then that was again because I wasn't living right,
Oh,
but is it really like serving a God if you're doing it out of fear? Like, is it really this copacetic loving relationship that it's framed to be if you're only in it out of fear? Like, that's an abusive relationship is what that is, where we're just waiting to be used by God. Like, people who love you don't use you. They lift you up and amplify you,
yeah, it's really a challenge to get out of that matrix of thinking.
It is. It's layers. It's so deeply.
There's layers and layers and layers and layers. I'll give you an example. One time I was up at a hot springs in Idaho. We did a winter retreat, and we were doing the technique of sitting in a hot tub and then jumping into an ice cold river to clear your chakras, okay? And I used to go up to a lake up in Idaho and I'd make a big bonfire and I'd throw a bunch of sage in it and I'd stand in the smoke and I would take this hatred I had for certain people and then I would run down and jump into the lake and clear my chakras that way. That's what the Native Americans used to do. I mean, it works to a certain degree. It just shocks your body, And one of them was acceptance. And I'll never forget, I was standing there and this friend of mine, he looks at me and he says, "You're still waiting for the church's approval, aren't you?" And, I hadn't been in the church in a number of years. And I go, wow, I really need to get rid of that. And I did. But that was so profound to think that, you have to get their approval.
Mm-hmm.
And think about people that are running around, they never feel like they'll ever measure up.
It's because the standard is impossible. The standard has been set impossibly high. Of course, you're not going to measure up. That's how they keep you in there. If they had told everybody that the answer is to come back to yourself, then they wouldn't have any. They wouldn't have a congregation. Like,
Take you out of a job.
Like,
All this real estate would be up for sale. All these churches would be up for sale. People have to use them for libraries or something else. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. Our society is so molded and financially dependent upon it too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's become an industry.
Absolutely. I call it the Jesus industrial complex. It's like, they've turned Jesus into a product.
Well, when I was in Idaho, there's a lot of LDS people, and they had, I lived real close to a Mormon temple, and I had clients and friends that were Mormon people. I love them; they're wonderful people. But it was the same thing.
Well, the Pentecostal, all of that actually stems from Mormonism.
Yeah.
That's it's like a branch off. Most of our evangelical religions are a branch off from Mormonism.
Yeah, because our ex-pastor, she was a Mormon that got converted to Pentecostalism.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So they had, and they have all these rules and regulations. It's an industry. It's a business.
Yeah.
So, and it's a social structure today.
Absolutely. And that's a lot about what I'm writing about in my book, is how the colonization, the missionaries have actually gone through and separated people from their knowledge, from their understanding, their wisdom of connecting with the earth and their bodies, and brought in this culture of crime and punishment. And there's this deity that's judging everything that you're doing. And so now your life is, in service to this deity to keep it happy. And so it's not just in the United States. I feel like it's reached most of the world.
Well, Hawaii is a perfect example.
Yeah.
When the Queen was brought into power, she did away with the kahunas here. And the kahunas, because I studied huna, which is a lot of what I do in energy work. It's connecting with your higher and lower soul. I mean, the Hawaiians had it pretty well figured out, and they could cross souls over. They understood how to cross souls over. But what I found was really interesting is when I went to Kona and I was going into the Hayals, crossing souls over, um, I could chronologically date the times. I started picking up souls that hadn't crossed over. It was around 1700, in the 1700s. Before that, there wasn't any souls I had to cross over because they'd already been taken care of. But that's when the kahunas were outlawed and they weren't allowed to exist here on the islands, you see. So now it became a Christian Methodist religion, a
Yeah.
congregational church. And that's when spirituality pretty much died here. And the Hawaiians were forced to either conform or shut up. So that it happens everywhere. But and then I had to start crossing souls over that were born after that because those souls were trapped. They didn't know what to do, the ones that had gone through trauma. So it was so interesting to me to see how that whole scenario had changed, you know,
Yeah.
and we see it everywhere around the world today.
Mm. Do you feel like that's why you were like attracted to Hawaii?
Yeah, I had two past life experiences here. And I used to come over here every year for like 10 years for vacation. So when I retired, I said, I gotta live over here. So we came over here, got here. And there's times when I miss the mainland to a certain degree, but I feel like my past lives have kept me here because I have such a strong connection with the ancestors. But I also have a strong Native American background when I was in Idaho because I had a past life experience with the Hopi Indians. So when I was in Sedona, I went over there. I crossed over a lot of Native American uh, tribes that hadn't crossed over. So I have this kind of connection between the Hawaiians and Native Americans more than, but I don't have any connections with Mideastern people, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. I think all of us have connections around the earth. You know, it's just kind of like, and if you decide that you're going to try to use your gifts and you have the luxury of having the ability to do that, in other words, maybe you have the finances to be able to move someplace or the freedom to do it, then you should take advantage of that and explore it and see where it takes you, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places where people aren't welcome as psychics, but it's changing, it's growing, you know. It's like anything else, but it's a cultural change. But there's a lot of people walking away from organized religion because it's become political. The concept of the purity of religion has kind of gone away. Now it's who you're going to vote for or something, you know? I mean, it's totally different. That's maybe helping souls wake up or at least question, you know, why am I here? What am I doing? Is my sole purpose just to be part of a political party that
Right.
may not even be here in 10 years from now? Who knows? So
Right.
it's kind of like maybe there's more to it. We as energy workers, we have to be at a place where we can help other people and not be biased. You know, that's very difficult at times, you know. You have to be able to step aside any bias that you might have and listen to other people. And that's why this energy work I think is so important because if we focus on ourselves we finally connect with ourselves like you are and a lot of other people, you can get rid of that. Open yourself up to see what we're supposed to be doing here on Earth. Well, we have this short little period of time in our physical bodies to do something, you know?
Yeah. I found because I was born into the church and my grandparents pastored the church and I was just like, I was in it.
Wow.
And I have found that for me to be able to, because like you were saying, like even when people leave the church, there's still that like is God, wanting to please God or get God's approval. And I had realized that like that was a touchstone for my foundation of belief and being. So I had undone a lot of stuff, but that was still, what I compared things to. Like it was still my basis of understanding. But when I had built my own foundation of belief in who I was that felt aligned with my soul, it was easy. It was like a natural just moving over from one touchstone to the new one that I had built. I can't imagine trying to undo an entire belief system without something else to lean on. And I think for me, like when I left the church and came to Hawaii, then I was very much in the New Age movement. And it took me, another 2 decades to realize that that's just another form of the same thing. And, I mean, it's still all about, like meeting a set of rules or whatever. And that ultimately, like we all have our own path, and the only one that knows our path is like the source, like our higher self, like the source of it all. So, there isn't, even like with like Abraham Hicks or someone like you or someone, it's all, everything that is spoken, it's going to be within the context of what you have, the words that you have and the things that you can relate to. So I also feel like for human beings, that's why it's so important, community, for our survival, is because we all have our own pieces, and to be able to bring those pieces together without someone else's path needing to look exactly like ours. Like when you were talking about your friend who is an atheist and having that relationship, it's like we need to understand our sameness while also accepting or respecting our difference.
Well, we're bombarded with so many aspects in our society today. Because everything's out in the open, right? We've got the internet now. So we used to be maybe just bothered with what kind of job do you have, right? Where do you work? Okay.
Yeah.
How much money do you make compared to the guy next door to you? Okay. Now we have, what race are you? Okay, that's important. What sexual affinity do you have, right? That was never brought up much before, okay? What political affinity do you have? It gets down to even what kind of food do you want to eat? Do you want to be a vegan or do you want to eat meat, right? Or even if you're meditating, well, do you want to follow this person or do you want to follow that person? I mean, it's so complicated. They're trying to make everything so complicated, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. But and I think due to the fact that we have access to so much information, and I have people that were vegan that were criticizing me, and I'm sitting in a group of psychics because I was eating eggs for breakfast, and they were just criticizing the hell out of me. And I'm going, wait a minute, is it really that important to you?
Right.
It was like, come on, give me a break here. That's all we're going to argue about is just what I'm eating for breakfast.
Right.
But that was it. That separated me from this other person. And this other person was getting really angry with me.
Wow.
And I go, this is okay. So let's take a step back here and look at this scenario and say, if that's what's so important to you, then you need to consider the fact that, okay, we need to work on something here, okay? How is our society going to get along if we have to argue over whether you're going to have eggs or you're going to have papaya for breakfast? I don't care.
Right.
Okay. But that's how extreme our society has become. That other person's a good person. And he's a wonderful person.
Mm.
But why do I have to be separated because of that one issue?
Right. Right.
So until people come to that point of quote unquote unconditional love, they don't understand the importance of it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the different opinions that we have about everything. Like Lahaina, for an example, you and I could make a whole list of things that people are arguing about, okay? And every one of them is probably justified in what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But there has to come a place of understanding and cooperation, or nothing's going to happen.
Right. Well, and that separateness is just distracting us, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in the unity that we grow and that we expand and evolve. And by keeping us separate, it's funny because I think for a long time I kind of thought of like the systems that are just like a puppet that's arranging everything. And while I'm sure that there is some degree of that. Like I think that's how it started, but the systems are already set in place, and everything that we're experiencing is just a result of us being in that system.
It's stimuli reaction.
Yeah, and it's built like on the basis of colonization, which was separating people from their culture, separating people from each other, from their divine connection. Because without that divine connection, you're searching, like you said, people are searching, they're desperate, they need some direction, and without any other context, like this is how God is fed to you. So, it's that or nothing, right?
I think that's one of the reasons why in our meditation groups, I try to get us into what we call the quantum field, okay, which is kind of like the source of where energy's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
We can ask the questions. We can do our own soul searching and say, what's with me anyway? How come I'm thinking this way? I need help. I need clarity. The reason for meditation is to really get that clarity so that we can see for ourselves, like you've already done that in clearing your past religious beliefs. So have I, okay? But you have to get the clarity and come into that point and say, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Do I still want to believe in this or believe in that when there's no foundation of truth to it? And maybe there isn't a foundation of truth in what I'm following right now. So I need to find out whether there is. So in energy work, what we do is we work on people. My own philosophy was, if we're going to work on people for healing, if they're not healed, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. Okay, it's not true.
Mm.
If people are healed, then we're learning to channel energy into a positive way.
Yeah.
Because what we're learning to do is channel energy, is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We keep the religious part of it out and just look at, I'm sending energy into this physical body. The physical body is assimilating the energy in that particular organ, and it's healing it. I don't understand how all that works. I don't even pretend to understand how it all works. But if it works, then I must be doing something correct.
Right.
Follow me? I'm on a path that's leading to something good because that person is benefiting from it. And rather than say, well, it was Jesus that healed the person. Now, how do I know if it was Jesus or goat in a third planet somewhere? How do I know any of that?
Right. Right.
I don't know where the source really came from, because everybody wants the answers for everything. I mean, I'm still seeking for answers, right?
Right. Right. Well, and I think that like we're looking for a finite definition of something that's infinite. Like there isn't a complete definition because it's always growing and changing and expanding, and that's the whole point, right? So to be able to put it and package it, it's not possible, and we're all going to understand it in a way that makes sense under the context that we have.
One time I was doing readings in a place here in Kihei, and I had this guy come in. He was from China, and he sat down in front of me, and he said, tell me who I am and what I want to do. I'm not telling you anything. So I looked at him for a minute, and I opened up to him, and I said, you're a scientist, you're a physicist, and you're come to learn how to manipulate energies. you're working on some sort of a program. He says, okay. He says, yeah, I read your book, Subtle Energy. And he says, we're building a quantum computer in China, and I'm trying to figure out how it works. Can you tell me how you do what you do? And I said, no, I can't. I was born with these gifts, but I do have the ability to move energy. And I said, you're trying to figure out how to quantify something that isn't, you can't hold it in form, okay? Because the quantum field's changing. It's like a matrix of energy that's changing. Billions of energy forms are changing constantly. You're trying to conform that into something like AI. AI can do certain things, okay? But you'll never be able to completely harness it because it's in a constant state of change.
That makes sense.
Our universe is changing every second. Everything that we're doing is in a state of change. Think of your thoughts. You can change your thoughts instantaneously. You can change your will to this, to that.
Yeah.
Instantaneously. So how can you put all that into a box and define it as this is the way it's going to be forever?
Right. You can't. Well, and I think it's important to just put a distinction on that, like that change is expansion. And that's one thing that really helped me to tune into my intuition was like, if I felt something or was asking a question and it felt expansive, well, that makes sense. If it felt like it was drawing my energy tight and drawing my energy in, that's not how energy works. It wants to expand, and having that understanding of like, if energy wants to expand, let's let it expand, and I'm not going to cause it to contract in any way if I can help it. So yeah, I think it's true. It is always changing. It's always expanding. You know, like
when we go into the quantum field, we try to allow ourselves to be shown something new. And in our class, we don't just stick to the same. I have a methodology to helping people get into, their dimensions, but that's only for their benefit. If they don't want to use it, they don't have to. But in reality, we don't know where we're going to go, you see, because we're being shown new things all the time. We're just being shown that we have the power to create energy fields of consciousness to change things.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? We have to learn how to do that. And it's constantly changing. So it's like, this is fun because we're not stuck in a box where we're just doing the same exercises every day. What we're doing
we don't have to just listen to like one person. We can all bring our understanding to the table.
One person doesn't have all the answers. That's why I like to have a group of us together, because every one of us is introducing ideas and sharing our energies together, because some person will come up with an idea and that will expand into another idea, and then we can start figure out how to work off that idea, right?
Right. Yeah. I love that about our group. And I've noticed that since we started doing it, like I get into the quantum field really easily in my meditations. I can feel it like just, whoop, okay, I don't have to take my time with that, and I've also, since we've been doing this group work, and I really think that the value of multiple people is exponential. Like you're really amplifying, you're bringing more energy into one place. Not that it's limited, but I don't know how it works, but I know that makes a difference when there's more people. And also when you're around people who have cleared their energy and operate in the quantum field, that you start to calibrate, I guess, for lack of a better word, to whatever energy that they're functioning under. So I've noticed in our group, like, the understanding of energy that is happening is just happening so quickly, more and more quickly. Like every time we do our meditations, every time we meet, until like last week, I literally had an experience where I could see anxiety in my cells and I could see it coming into my body. And instead of letting it draw me in, I said, nope, this is going to expand me fully. And I opened it up and I could see it had a color, I could see it in my cells. And I just let it be there. And once it had taken up all of its space, I was like, now your excitement. And everything changed. it changed colors. It like continued to expand. And then everything in my world started to change. I started getting calls about job offers and everything. And like, that's when I realized like, I literally have control over this energy. Like by feeling it, recognizing it, then I can tell it what I want it to be. I'm not being controlled by this energy. And that has been mind blowing. Like this past week has just been like, whoa, because now I'm having so much fun with it. Like, oh, this is weird. What's the energy in that? And what can I do with it? You know, so it works. I don't know how it works, but I know it works. You know,
It's called the law of attraction. Whatever you put out, you get back. And so lots of times we'll connect into our heart chakras, which is our power center, and we'll manifest our desires, right?
Mhm.
So what do you think you're doing? The heart chakra is 5,000 times more powerful than your brain. Who told us that? The CIA. They've been working with people since the 60s.
Mhm.
CIAs have the top psychics in the world working for them. They do all this remote viewing of different things. Well, I read one of their books, you know, and it was like, okay, your heart chakra is where you manifest your energy. So think about it. You take your intent. We take all of those people together. We take 8 people, let's say. We put them all together, and we put all of our intent on healing the ozone or something, or healing our oceans. We're sending energy out into the ocean to heal the pollution. The molecules in the water that are killing animals, sending our intent. Now, we don't really understand on a chemical basis how it works, but we don't have to know that because we're giving that energy out there for an energy field of consciousness that knows how to do that. I don't know what you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Call it elementals or devic spirits, or you can put any kind of a name you want on it. Doesn't matter. We're sending that energy out to that particular thing, concentrating all of our energies together, our intent, our desire into that, and it works
It
because
does work. Couldn't help but notice like they had made an announcement on the news that Maui was going to have 3 months of drought. It was going to be our driest winter ever. We were going to have no rain. And then in our group, we started focusing on rain coming. And it was like within a week, we had like a week long rain, and it has rained. It's rained all over the island multiple times since then. A little bit of flooding. It was a lot of rain. Maybe, maybe we could pull it back a little bit. I don't know. But I saw immediate, I mean, like everything was saying we weren't going to get rain. We all focused on it. The rain started coming. I also have noticed that within myself, and I noticed it as a kid, and I never really understood what it was, that when the wind was doing something, that I could just tell it what to do and be like, okay, but move here for now. I need to do this thing, and you're going to blow it away or whatever. And I just think about it, be like, okay. And the wind would literally do what I was telling it to do. And I couldn't help but notice that. I'm like, I think I'm having an effect on this, you know? But then when I started taking hula and learning the olis and chanting, and, you know, whenever you start chanting, all the leaves start blowing and all the birds start going crazy and the wind gets involved. And I was like, oh yeah, that was really happening. Like that's a real thing.
well, the Native Americans had their rain dances. It's not
Yeah.
different than what you were doing. They were
Yeah.
tuning into the energy fields of consciousness that control the weather patterns. And they learned how to, you know, energize that particular field of energy to create rain. I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years. So what we did is we just energetically went into what I term the word elementals, which is nothing more than a state of consciousness that's controlling the environment. And when I was doing the medicine wheel, it was the north, south, east, west wind, which basically I was able to identify as angels. But I mean, it's all the same stuff. You know, it's all learning how to use energy, and it's fun because when you learn it for good, you're not learning it to control people and, you know, for your own greed. You're learning to do it to help mankind. Then the earth responds very well because we're all in harmony. What we're trying to find is harmony on this planet through a maze of chaos that has been deliberately created to disrupt mankind.
You cut me loose and set me free. You make me win every way. You showed me how to spend my ways. Yes, I'm the winner of the day.
Head over to my website at leavingthechurchdefyinggod.com. There, you can make a donation and make sure that we continue to have these conversations. No matter where you are on your spiritual journey, if you or someone you know would like to join the podcast and tell your story, please reach out to me on Instagram at authenticallymelly. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep finding your own unique connection to something greater. Until next time, stay authentic, stay open, and aloha.